have, and the blocks they have, and the misconceptions they have to do with the food itself. So a lot of people said who have tried being vegetarian but stopped, a lot of them say because they craved meat. Has anybody ever heard people say that? Anybody ever said that they craved meat? And what I really try to convey to people is that we're not obligate carnivores. We don't crave the flesh of other animals. We are not lions on the plain who see deer and gazelle run by and we pounce. It would be a very different Port Townsend if that's what everybody was doing. That's just not what we are. We are not obligate carnivores. We don't crave the flesh of other animals. If you want to know what it looks like to crave the flesh of an animal, look at an African documentary. Look at a domestic cat who sees a bird. Have you ever seen a domestic cat just look at a bird or see a deer or see like a squirrel, not a deer because that would actually be very interesting. My cats see deer all the time and they don't have the same reaction. Usually just smaller animals than they are. But you've seen them see a squirrel, right? And you could be in the bird, you could be petting them, you could be loving on them, and they see a bird and they just go whoosh, and their eyes dilate and their tail starts to flicker and they start to drool and they make this little chirpy sound. Does that happen to you when you see birds in the field or deer? I hope not. Because no one's really that definitive in this room. Yeah, maybe a little bit. It's not how we get when we see other animals. We are not obligate carnivores, right? That's how we don't even get like that if we see an animal who's been hit by a car. If we see an animal who's been hit by a car, our first reaction is usually disgust and then usually compassion, right? We hope they didn't suffer. We don't take out our forks and start thinking about lunch and how we could use our chopped up onions with that raccoon. We just don't do that, right? So the point is that we don't crave the flesh of other animals, but we do crave fat. We crave salt, we crave texture, we crave flavor, we crave familiarity, and these are all the things that people are looking for. That's what's so familiar to people. And so that's what I convey. I've had so many people say that I love steaks. I could never live without steaks. I really do talk about the fact that you don't know until you stop, that you actually could live without steak. I'm gonna tell you right now, there's hope, you can live without steak. But those who talk about the texture, I talk about the fat and the texture and they go, you know, you're right, it's not about the animal. That's why there's so many wonderful vegan meats out there. It doesn't matter where it's from, it just matters that there's that experience that people have, that there's a certain mouthfeel, that there's a certain chewiness, there's a certain texture, there's a certain creaminess. That's that whole experience. That's what it's about for people. And that's what I convey to people. And when you do make the transition, your palate does change. You don't crave the things that you used to crave. And I use the word crave very loosely. We do tend to use this crave when we want to add credibility to what we really desire. Have you ever noticed that? We talk about craving as if it's some physiological need that we have no control over, like our bodies are telling us to do this despite ourselves, right? So we use the word crave that way, and I'm using that word crave in quotations as well, because when I say crave, I really mean desire. And because it's also familiar. You know, none of us crave, African vegetables that we've never had before, or meat that we only crave what we once had. We crave what we're familiar with. So it's a matter of finding that familiarity and that texture and that mouthfeel. Does that make sense? There are just so many ways to obviously get that. It could be from whole vegetables, whole, avocado from the fat. It could be the guacamole that you get for the creaminess. There are wonderful commercial versions of all of this now. So there's no lack of meeting those needs for the texture and familiarity and fat and salt and flavor, right? And it does change as your palate changes. And then you have people who say things like, I could never give up X. I could give up everything, but I could never give up X. And the X is usually
she.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, it's just so remarkable. It's just so remarkable. And of course, I would say that we don't have to give up cheese because there's so many wonderful non-dairy cheeses out there. Or if it's not the commercial cheeses that you like, there's ways to convey that. Because when people say, what about cheese? I say, well, in what form, in what context? Because there's so many ways that we consume cheese, right? It could be melted, it could be creamy, it could be sliced, it could be spreadable, whatever. So first, I actually want to talk about what those different things are. But really, the truth is, when someone says that, what they're really saying is, I could give up everything, but I could never give up cheese. And I say, well, what are you eating now? And they said, well, everything. And I say, well, why don't you give up everything except cheese? And they go, I never thought about that before. But it never occurred to them because we tend to be so black and white that it never occurred to them that it makes absolutely no sense to do absolutely nothing because you think you have to do everything. So don't do nothing because you can't do everything. Do something. anything. Every single step we take, everything we do will bring us closer to the people we want to be, the health we want to have, the animals we want to help. But it doesn't make any sense to do nothing at all because we think we have to do everything. Does that make sense? And I think what is so beautiful about that message is that I have seen more people become vegan from that message. You would think that would give people license to say, well, then I'll just do everything I can, and that's really not that much, but I'll just do what I think I can. And you'd think they wouldn't do anything at all. It actually gives them the permission to just relax and say, what can I really do? Like, how honest can I be with myself here? I really can do a lot more. And then what happens is you start this train of just discovery and learning new things and trying new things and realizing that you are actually capable of letting go of cheese, right? Because of course, one of the chapters in 30-Day Vegan Challenges, there is life after dairy-based cheese. Of course there is. That's ridiculous, because if everybody thought they would not survive without cheese, I don't even know. I mean, it's just absolutely self-defeatist. And that's what we do all the time. And yet everybody says they want to do something different. Everybody says they want to make a difference. Everybody says they want to affect change. They want to live a meaningful life. They want to leave behind this world, a better world than when they came into it, right? Everybody says this, but I think people forget that in order to make a difference, we may have to do something different. And that only requires being open. Being open, right, that's all, I just say to people, never say never. Just be open to the change that encourages us to learn new things. Just this discovery of trying new things and becoming better people and making better choices and making more compassionate choices once we know better. And that requires being open and looking and keeping our eyes open and being willing to take in what might be painful, but will ultimately be so rewarding for ourselves and for our own consciousness, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. Because what I know for sure is that the problems we have in this world are not because we have so much compassion we don't know what to do with it. The problems we have in this world are because we're not living according to our own values of compassion and wellness so that we can make the difference we say we want to have. Imagine what it would be like if people actually lived according to the values that they say they have. Just imagine if that were on people's to-do list every day. Imagine what it would be like. And so ultimately, people ask me then, do you think it's possible that people can make a difference? And my answer is absolutely not. It is not possible that we can make a difference. I know people do make a difference. We don't get to choose whether we can make a difference or not. We get to choose only if the difference we inevitably make is negative or positive. That's it. Those are our only two choices, right? Everything we do, everything we eat, everything we buy has an impact on someone or something else. We don't get to decide whether we make a difference or not. We are making a difference. So we get to choose only whether we want that difference to be negative or positive. And I think that is incredibly empowering and frightening for people. It's empowering because it means we're responsible and we get to choose whether we want to do this or not. We get to choose if we have the power. And it's empowering and it's frightening because it means that we're responsible and we have the power to choose. That's what I think it comes down to. So ultimately, what I ask of people, my dream for all of us is not to do what everybody else is doing or what I'm saying to do or whatever. It's do what I know is in our hearts, who we really already are, right? Because most of us say that we're against violence. Most of us say that we're compassionate people. Most of us consider ourselves compassionate people. Most of us don't want to support violence, and yet we're doing so in our behavior every day. So the bottom line is to just decide what it is we want to support in the difference we're inevitably making. And that's my hope for all of us, is that our daily choices reflect our deepest values, and we realize that we really do have the power to create the world we all say we want to have. So that's it. That is my wish for all of you. Thank you, everybody.